Next up, we've got, in my worldview, the main event, Bret Hart and Stone Cold Steve Austin. This was built up for a long time. They had a match over the summer, overseas that was released on Coliseum Video. Then, of course, Bret is gone. Stone Cold starts calling him out. Bret returns, accepts the challenge in October, and they face each other at the Garden at Survivor Series. But we're not done yet. They continue their feud. Stone Cold is the winner of the Royal Rumble after screwing Bret Hart at the Rumble match itself. They face each other in the Final Four. That doesn't go as everybody hopes. The go-home show for Raw, they screw Bret again. So this slow, subtle turn starts to happen. And there's lots of great promos building this up from Stone Cold's side, where he says something along the lines of, if Bret had been screwed as many times as he says, he would have struck oil by now. I ain't bringing a condom to the ring, but I'm bringing a hell of a can of whoop ass. All these little catchphrases, he really starts to get on and get over the bottom line, et cetera, et cetera. And I believe this is Stone Cold's coming out party, from a WrestleMania standpoint. I think the seeds, he was legitimized at Survivor Series. He became a superstar at the Royal Rumble, but he became the guy, at least in my view, here at WrestleMania. Would you agree with that?
Wholeheartedly.
The entrance is fucking awesome. If you have not seen this match, when we're done with this podcast today and you're finished, you need to go watch it today. It's one of the best matches in the history of professional wrestling. That's not just my opinion. That's a motherfucking fact. Kurt Hawkins would agree. So go check it out. WrestleMania 13. It's an I Quit match. Let's talk about why it's I Quit. It seems kind of cornball that it's a submission match. It's an I Quit match. And you've got Ken Shamrock here. They interview him, beforehand. Pettingill does in the back. And he says, well, I'm here because I understand submissions. And they show a clip from Raw where he is taking down Rockabilly Billy Gunn and kind of embarrassing him on Raw with a couple of different spots. And he keeps saying, I wasn't trying to hurt him. I was just trying to show him who I am. And he's in the back with his necklace and his jumpsuit looking like he's an extra from The Sopranos. And then he comes out in a painted on referee shirt. What's the thinking in making Ken Shamrock the referee?
Just to introduce Ken in a different way and put him in a top match and get Ken right into the top picture and put him in there with stars to introduce him. So it was just a different way to get him out there.
When did you start drug testing Ken Shamrock? The week after? This motherfucker looks like Hulk Hogan circa 1987 right here in his referee shirt. Am I wrong?
Kenny still looks like that.
Well, Bellator doesn't drug test. Let's get to the match itself. Stone Cold has said that this match was kind of difficult for him because he didn't really even have a fucking submission move. And so he's in the I Quit match with no submission moves. And that's kind of evidenced by the match. It starts off as a brawl. Stone Cold comes out first. The glass breaks with the Austin 316. Out next is Bret. And the announcers are really laying it on heavy here about, Bret and his recent reactions and the way he's been handling himself. And they're just really laying it on thick. And I think they do a great job in trying to tease this turn before it becomes very apparent. And you certainly see more of it unfold during the course of the match. Stone Cold starts off with a brawl right away. They're in the ring just for a few seconds, and then they're outside the ring, up and over the rail in front of Atlas and Albano, up the stairs, fighting through the crowd, just all over everywhere. What'd you think of the match?
Loved it. Loved every bit of it. The way Steve started it with the double leg and the way that they rolled around on the mat to start it, it was a fight In addition to that, the way that the announcers told the story of that Austin didn't have a submission maneuver, but that he was going to beat the hell out of Bret until he quit. So it did tell the story of Bret is a submission guy, and he does know a lot of submissions. Steve doesn't, but he'll beat the hell out of him so much that Bret will want to quit. So the setup I thought was great, and these guys told a beautiful story in the match.
Let's talk about one of the more famous segments. I guess before we do that, we should talk about the fact that I think Bret did one of his better jobs here of isolating a body part and working on a body part. It becomes very realistic. I mean, the way he works on the leg and the way Austin sells everything. A lot of people kind of sleep on Austin as an in-ring performer. This is maybe the height of his career here as far as in-ring stuff. The dude is just a phenomenal next-level in-ring performer, and people just really focus on the character and the promos, and don't get me wrong, that's all awesome too. But his selling here and his work here is just fucking awesome, and I think a lot of people kind of forget that he's capable of this. But the way Bret worked on the leg, man, it just told the story, and Austin helped a great deal with that, of course. But at some point, they go to the outside. You see Bret start to prepare himself. Austin starts to Irish whip Hitman into the rail, and Bret reverses it. So Bret goes over, zips Austin. He admits he hadn't bled a lot in his career at that time. He asked Bret to do it for him. He does it. And the blood really adds to the match. And this one maybe more so than most. Because the story here is Austin just won't quit. He has the will to win and to not quit, and he'll pass out before he'll quit. He's just not going to quit. And at one point, he breaks the sharpshooter, or so it seems. They put over that nobody's ever done that, but Bret doesn't release the hold. Earlier in the match, we saw the figure four around the ring post, which was very innovative at the time, something that Bret Hart doesn't get enough credit for because people still use it today. And his knee is giving out. He's already wearing a brace. And now he's pouring blood out. Just an iconic photo of himself as he's pushing out of the sharpshooter, and blood's coming down his face and through his mouth and his teeth. And then he doesn't respond to Ken Shamrock when he's asking, if you don't tell me no, I'm going to stop the fight. He doesn't respond. Ken rings the bell. Bret's a little reluctant to break the hold. A few seconds later, Bret starts attacking the unconscious Austin again, kicking him in the leg, and eventually Shamrock has to belly-to-back suplex him off, and the double turn is complete. So Austin eventually comes to. A referee tries to console him or help him. He gives the referee a stunner. He leaves to Austin chants. Meanwhile, Bret is walking down the aisle, flipping off fans, saying fuck you to him. So we have a complete double turn with a crybaby Bret Hart and a badass heel who is too cool for school, who's now a badass babyface, and Steve Austin. Is this the best double turn ever?
I think so. Yeah, without a doubt. The story told by these guys, the match laid out, with Bret. Bret's a master of painting a picture in the ring. And as you said, the picture that he painted was he was going to isolate that leg and isolate that knee and hurt Steve. And Steve's selling was off the Chizard. It's incredible. But the story that they told, and they got everybody over. But there was one key thing, and I mentioned this when we first started this podcast about Chris Jericho and what made Chris Jericho such a great heel were the nuances. If you go back and you watch this at the very end, when after Shamrock pulls Bret off and Bret starts to come into Shamrock, Bret just suddenly takes that one step back.
Yep.
Away from, showing that respect to Shamrock. And right there, everything that you had done up until that point, that made your heel because he backed up.
Yep.
And he was a chicken shit for that second. And if you weren't sure up until that point, that was the one little subtlety that Bret did that took you over the edge. You go, no, Bret, come on, not my Bret. And he took you the rest of the way. And that, to me, is just the art of the business that I love so much.
The Observer wrote, an incredible brawl from bell to bell with psychology and timing, the likes of which you'll only see when the best go against each other. He also says, this is one we'll remember for a long time, and gives it 5 stars. I can't.
Would have been 6 stars if it was in the Tokyo Dome.
I love you for that. I love this match. I think it's one of the best matches ever. Certainly at the top of my list. I can't recommend it enough. You need to go out of your way to watch this. If you've never seen it, if you've seen it 1,000 times, go fucking watch it again. It'll remind you why you're a fan. Why wouldn't you just put Austin and Bret in the main event? It seems like that's what everybody wanted to see.
I think, well, I'll give you that answer. And the reason is that Vince at that time did see something in Austin and was really feeling something with Austin, but he wanted it to play out and he wanted that build. I'm not sure that he saw everything that he got until really that night with Tyson. I mean, we saw, man, that Austin build is one just unique motherfucking build that happened right underneath your nose, and there was no denying it. And then all of a sudden, it was pedal to the metal.
When do you remember Austin being like Vince saying, this is the guy? I'm not trying it anymore. I know this is the guy. Did he know after WrestleMania 13, or was there another show in particular?
He knew at 13. I dare say he probably knew at Survivor Series the year before. The stuff that Austin did, which I've talked about on this show before, behind the chain link fence and with the dogs barking, yeah. Hey, Bret, I got, and all that. That was where everybody all of a sudden turned their head and said, oh, shit, we got something here.